Hey, I'm just going to show you a few outside hip opening stretches that you can do, and then finish out with some chest opening stretches. So the first one that you can do is a pigeon pose. So you'll take your right knee to your right wrist, and the bottom leg is at an angle, especially if you have a tight hip or tight knee. And you're going to push your toes strongly down into the ground in order to keep this whole leg active. The back toes can stay curled under, and you can scoot this leg forward and back depending on your degree of flexibility. So as you're doing this, you can stay here, and this might be enough for the hip, or you can come down onto your forearms here, and then again scooting the leg back if you want a little bit more, or resting your forehead on the ground, and then if you want a little bit more, you can extend your arms out. So whatever degree you want to be able to access this outer hip. So from here as well, if you want to get a back thigh stretch, you can just reach back and grab the foot if that's accessible for you as well. Now in this same type of position, a really good outer hip stretch would be to lift up, placing your foot basically underneath where your face is, coming up onto your fingertips. And then you keep this knee bent. Again, the foot is active. The toes are pulling back towards you. And then you slowly begin to open the knee out to the side. And you can just hang out here, rocking back and forth. So you keep the bottom toes active in order to protect the knee. So just moving back and forth. And then of course, you would want to do that with both sides, coming into the pigeon on this side, going to whatever degree feels good for you. Coming onto those fingertips. And if your foot doesn't quite get to the center of your mat, you can just help it with your hand. Again, flexing those toes, and then slowly opening up that outer hip. So the more you flex the toes and push the foot down, the more you're actually going to feel it in the outer hip. And just rock back and forth. So if that's a little bit too much for you and you want to do something a little bit do the step before that, before you do the pigeon, you can take it into a reclined position, so laying on your back, and you'll hook your foot on top of your thigh. Again, toes are active, and then you pull your bottom knee towards you using your muscles. One hand goes inside, the other hand wraps around to grab a hold of the back of the thigh, flexing your feet. So you're here, and this might be enough. You can slowly begin to pull the bottom leg towards you if you want a little bit more, using your elbow to externally rotate this knee away from you. And then breathe. So this is one option here, and you can start to rock back and forth in order to get into that outer hip. But keep your legs as active as possible so that you can feel into that hip. And then of course doing both sides, and you're here, going back and forth. So the next one gets into the glutes and the outer hip as well, and also a little bit into the inner thighs if you have tight inner thighs. So you'll cross as close to the knee as you possibly can. Flex your feet. And this one you'll have to use your abdominal muscles a bit. So you pull your knees towards you using those abs, and then you grab a hold of the outside of your leg. Now if you're really tight here and you can't quite grab the outside of your leg, you can just come from the inside and grab underneath, grab the calf muscles here. And you'll begin to feel that into the outer hip and into the glutes. Again, the feet are active, and then of course you'll switch sides, crossing at the knee, and then go into whatever degree feels good for you. And you'll just notice that one side is tighter than the other. For me, this is my tight side, and so I can feel it. Feet are active. Okay, so from here, you can come to standing. And this next one is kind of my nemesis pose. It actually hurts quite a bit, or can hurt quite a bit. But the idea is you want to stack your legs on top of one another. So I'll show you face on. So the front leg will come parallel to the front of your body. If you're on your mat, the front leg will come parallel to the front of your mat. So from here, you then take your other leg and you stack it on top. Again, toes active, you stack it on top of the knee. So you're not doing this, that's a different posture. You want both legs to be as parallel as possible, and then readjust your hips so that you're sitting up nice and tall as much as possible. Again, keeping the knees nice and active. So I have a pretty significant gap here because my hips are pretty tight right now. But if I were to hang out here and take a few breaths, this knee would start to close the gap slowly but surely. So over time you do this and your leg will come down. When I first started, my leg was all the way up here. And even still, it's tighter on some days than others. So staying here, and in each of these postures, you're going to want to stay for about 10 breaths before you switch the sides. So from here, you can release, extend your legs out and just shake it out a bit. And then try the second side and just see. Again, flexed feet. Readjust your hips so you can sit nice and tall. And you're here, and you breathe. So if I were to sit here for a long enough time, I would eventually be able to get this knee to close that gap, like I said. The main key, though, is pulling your legs in, so using the muscles of your thighs to pull in strongly, and then let the action of the left knee, these muscles, push down, and then breathe. And you just hang out here. So some people get that for free. Some people can pop right into that posture and have it not be a big deal. Other people like myself, or people who have tight hips, it's a pretty significant stretch. So just go to your own degree. All right, that'll start you off for now. Thanks. Okay, so to open up your chest a bit here, I'll show you two different stretches. So one in particular is really, really helpful when you know you have tight chest or you have a really tight bicep. So if you're sitting at a computer doing this kind of work, or if you're using a mouse all day, this can be really, really beneficial if you notice that you have a tendency to roll your shoulders forward. So we'll start with a wall next to you, and you're going to stand about 6 inches away from the wall with your feet hip-width distance and parallel. So you'll take your first arm up with your thumb facing up, reach up, and then back, and karate chop the wall with the outside edge of your hand. And you want to karate chop it and push strongly into the wall. So you're reaching up, back, and then push. And now the elbow, depending on your degree of flexibility, you can either have your arm straight or slightly bent, just depends. So the arm straight, and it'll change what muscles you're working with depending on if you have your arm straight or if you have your elbow bent. So as you're pushing in, you rotate your chest away from the wall and then breathe. And you'll notice that your arm might go numb, and that's okay because you'll move the arm down and all the blood will rush to the arm, which is ideally what helps get some of that stagnant, stuck energy and get some blood flowing into those muscles, which helps to release them and get things moving a bit. So you push, take your 10 deep breaths here, and then eventually you work to where you're having your whole palm flat against the wall. So it looks like this from the other side. And of course you want to do both sides, so make sure you reposition your feet. Up, back, push. You work towards having a flat hand on the wall, elbow bent to whatever degree works for you, rotating your chest away from the wall. And then you can slowly start to spider crawl your hand up the wall and then push. So with each little movement up the wall that you're making, you're opening up different parts of the pec muscle and into the bicep. The main key to remember, though, is that you are pushing strongly into the wall with your whole hand, and especially gripping with your pointer finger in the palm, and then gripping with your actual fingertips, and that'll help to increase the stretch. So again, whichever degree you take, and you can take about 3 minutes each side to really breathe and open up and expand your chest, bringing your shoulder blade onto your back as much as possible. Another thing to keep in mind here is that you don't want your chin, you don't want to turn with your neck. You want the rotation to come with your chest. So you can keep your head straight, let the rotation come from your chest, moving away from the wall. And then as you come out of it, keep your chest lifted. The tendency is for people to come back. So they'll come back and then kind of bend the chest and then roll forward. So they're going back to that old pattern. So keep your chest lifted, keep your chest open as you're doing that. So the next one would be a pretty standard interlace of your hands behind your back. You keep your elbows bent here, shoulder blades on your back, and then pull your arms away from your hips. So this might be enough for you, just doing this. And let the action be pulling your hips or your hands away from your hips. Keep a slight bend in your knees here, and then breathe. So you want to pull the tops of your shoulders down and away from ears versus having them up here, right? You're going to get stuck and it's pretty uncomfortable. So pull the shoulders away from your ears, pull your hands away from your hips. So from here, if this is okay for you, you can slowly bend into your knees, flex your thighs really strongly, and then begin to fold forward. And just keep pulling your hands away. And pull your palms away from your back and then down. So there's the difference between here and then pulling the palms down and away from you. Push into your heels and then slowly come back up. And then just shake it out. So those would be some really good beginning postures to do to start to open up and get some of the movement into the back body versus being so contracted in the front. All right, I hope that helps. Thanks.